people who quit a job in the heat of the moment. What's your story? This is a repost. I had a position that was a year's contract. The year was coming up and I decided that I did not want to continue past the end date. So I told my boss, a complete moron, that I wasn't going to renew my contract. This was 6 weeks before the contract ended. Starting from that day, I was person non grata in the office. I wasn't CC'd on any emails, not invited to any staff meeting. They had a team building event outside the office one day. I showed up for work and no one was there in my department. They were all out team building. I spent the whole day just reading a book, surfing the web, etc. On my final day, it was about 1 p.m., and I was saying goodbye to people in other departments. The boss comes down and says, "We need you in the office now." I used the phone to call someone, and they said that they had planned a goodbye party for me. After 6 weeks of being treated like shit, they wanted to make themselves feel good by giving me a cake. I said no way, and snuck up to my desk, already cleaned out, and walked out the front door, got in my car and drove home. Turns out they started paging me for about 30 minutes, then realized that I was gone, and the boss got pissed. She decided not to send out my record of employment, so I can collect unemployment insurance. I sent an email to her boss's boss, and the CEO explaining what she did, and they had 3 days to get me my ROE, and if it did not arrive with my final paycheck, I would file a complaint with the government, and see where it goes. It arrived via Purelator the next day. She was fired 2 months later. I had to lay off my entire staff, and myself, with 8 hours notice. I was the contract project manager on a government project, office-type work. At our periodic review on a Thursday, the government announced they would not be renewing our contract, and our last day was Friday. The next day, I brought everyone into the conference room first thing the next day, let everyone know that we were all out of a job, and that today was everyone's last day. I had everyone email me their resumes, and we went over everyone's on the conference room projector, and updated them over the course of the day. I then printed out reference sheets for everyone, and we all spent the remainder of the day writing letters of recommendation for each other. I ordered everyone pizza, and bought everyone a round of drinks at the bar next door. Most folks had jobs by the end of the next week. You, individually and as a group, are exceptionally good people. You did the best you could, with the hand you got dealt. Didn't happen to me, but I got to watch this happen. I went into a Taco John's, and ordered a super burrito with no tomatoes, or black olives, to go. They weren't super busy, but there were a couple of orders ahead of mine. So I'm standing near the counter watching them put items together, and I see that they have started on my burrito. The cook loads it up with everything, and wraps it up. He has it in his right hand, and reaches up with his left to clear out the order on the monitor. He stops for a moment when he realizes that he fucked up by putting everything on the burrito. He is facing me, and he turns around, and fires a 100 miles per hour fastball burrito against the back wall. He walks into the back room, takes off his Taco John's shirt, puts on a t-shirt, grabs his smokes, and his drink, and heads out the back door. 30 seconds later, the girl running the drive-thru wants to know where Brian is. I pointed him out to her, as by now he is walking across the parking lot toward downtown. I told her that I think Brian gave his notice. She says a few choice words, and wants to know what I ordered. Way to give it the man, Brian. I worked for Best Buy back in the early 2000s, before Geek Squad, as one of their computer techs while in college. The job itself wasn't horrible, but it was boring as hell, because anything past a simple upgrade was sent out to some depot, so I wasn't very invested in the job. On top of that, they never got around to ordering my work shirts, so I just walked around in a black polo I already owned instead of a black Best Buy polo. You'd think that was a hint that they didn't give a shit about their employees. But then came all the issues with scheduling. I had a very rigid and predictable school schedule, 8 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. every day. I told my boss when he hired me about it, and he said it wasn't an issue. However, they kept scheduling me for noon to 8 p.m., or some weird shit that conflicted with my schedule at college. After the first few times of, "Where the hell have you been?" it kinda became a running joke, and I realized maybe a better job was a good idea. Cue the biggest shopping day of the year, Black Friday. Store was set to open at some ungodly early hour like 3 a.m. So they wanted everyone at the store at 2 a.m. to get ready. I drag my ass in, and an hour later, all hell breaks loose. Customers being assholes, coworkers being grumpy, and the store manager being a dick to everyone. It sucked. I was tired, and we quickly figured out that there was no intent on giving any breaks, even though we were scheduled enough hours to legally require one. About 5 a.m. rolls around, and coworkers are getting pissed at management for no breaks, and started treating customers like crap. Manager comes over and starts yelling, so I take off my name tag, throw it on the counter, and tell him I quit, right in front of the computer department staff and customers, and grab my coat, and start walking out. He yells after me, "You have to turn in your shirt right now," to which I turn around, and yell back, "I've been here 3 months, and you never got me a shirt." Petty, but damn, that felt good. Edit, someone gave gold for this, and said sorry we are late, here is your shirt. Laugh out laugh. I love Reddit, thanks stranger. I was also a pre-Geek Squad Best Buy Tech, late 90s, and we didn't send anything to depot, but otherwise sounds the same. But I also had the boss from hell. He'd make us squeeze customers for every last cent, as if it were going directly in his pocket. He dropped a TV on my finger, and it cut a pea-sized chunk out of it. Asked to go to first aid, and was told I couldn't. So I just bled on everything. The workbench, computers, merchandise. It looked like a body exploded in there. After about 30 minutes, I've got a million stories from that place, but my quitting story was a boring one. Relayed to me by one of my buddies, way back when we were still in high school. My friend's coworker was getting fed up with the supermarket they worked in. It was a few towns over, in a not so nice area, and was right off the highway, so that made it super busy, and a lot of out-of-town commuters. He was going away to college, and hated management. On his last day, a woman walks up to his line, and tries to browbeat him into taking a bunch of expired coupons. He tells her he needs to check with his supervisor, and slowly pulls out a jack-in-the-box from under his till, and methodically places it on the scanner, and just starts cranking the thing. When it finally pops, he looks her in the eye, and just says yeah. He said no. She flipped out, and screamed for a manager while he just cracks up, takes off his smock, and walks out. Edit, sent a link to my buddy who wanted to correct a few points. Apparently we were older than I remember. Freshman in college. The guy who quit was a high school senior. Also, he said it wasn't as smooth as I made it seem. The person who quit had already told his friend, coworker, same high school I assume, about his plan, and they were both barely keeping it together. Worked at a call center, taking pizza orders, and would dispatch them to the appropriate store. I was in high school, and didn't really need the job, but still was generally a good employee. My accuracy rate was above average, though I always hated this measurement anyway, since there was no review process. If someone called in, and claimed there is a discrepancy in what they claimed they ordered, and what they got, unless the store misread the order, it was put as a strike against the order taker, with no review. Calls were not recorded, and they could order pizza ABC, get pizza ABC, call back in and say they actually ordered pizza XYZ, and I'd get to automatic strike, and they would get a credit, replacement based on the circumstances. If they wanted a replacement, we actually told them they had to return the pizza in full. When we bring the correct pizza, if they ate any of it they only got a small credit. The job was alright, The hours were meh. I was often working until 12 am to 1 am on school nights. At the time, I didn't have a car and was walking, about a 25-minute walk in good weather, to get there. I had recently had a few strikes against me on errors as mentioned above. My average was still decent and I am sure some of the errors were legit. And one day, a blizzard hits, and I leave early to walk to work, but the sidewalks are not plowed, and the bridge to get there is not accessible yet. I find an alternative, but it takes me a ton of time to get there. The office is literally on the other side of the bridge, but under the bridge is over a freeway, and there is no other easy route, without going way out of your way to get there. I walk in about 20 minutes late, and between that and the strikes I had, I guess my supervisor was upset. I see the phones are rammed, my supervisor is on the phone, so I can't immediately apologize for being late, and planned on it when there was a moment. I quickly sit down and start working. As soon as I get off the first call, my supervisor calls my name loudly in front of everyone, and berates me a bit, then tells me to go home. Lines holding and it was busy, the other employees were pissed. So I packed up, went out in the blizzard, and walked back home, and never came back. Some friends that worked there were pretty upset, because I took a lot of shifts off them, always worked the busy shifts, did the shifts generally disliked by high school students, Friday/Saturday nights, etc. I believe they ended up calling to schedule shifts, which I just ignored, and I was told it didn't go well for that supervisor, for losing one of the more flexible employees. Long story short, I am a flexible employee working in a call center for a pizza chain. Blizzard causes me to be 20 minutes late. Supervisor sends me home immediately during busy hours. On that walk home in the blizzard, I decided she was not sending me home for that shift, but permanently, because I wasn't going back. Never knew pizza chains had their own call center. Laugh out loud. Promoted to assistant manager at GameStop, specifically to go to another store, to help deal with one of the biggest loss prevention disasters the district had been dealing with for months. Had worked for the company for 4 years, including the transition from EB Games. Survived multiple, nearly the entire store is fired for stealing nightmares. Because, you know, I don't steal, help clean up the store, and get everything back on track. One morning, I even found $2,000 worth of Xbox 360s that weren't in the inventory. Double check, triple check. I could have walked out the door with them, and nobody could have known. Call the district manager, who thanks me and tells me to enter them in inventory. Overall, the store is doing better. Not great, but things are moving in the right direction. Get a much better job offer, though I'm not going to start for a month. Immediately give my notice. Soon after that, the company isn't pleased with the store manager's performance, so he's fired, and the temporary store manager and the district manager beg me to not quit early, since the store manager was a good friend, and they thought I'd be pissed. I assured them that I wouldn't do that. Last day comes and goes. Leave on good terms. A few months later, I decide to reapply as a sales associate, to get some extra cash during the holidays. They tell me I'm on the no-hire list, because the store I had worked at had lost so much money to theft. Yes, the very same store I was hired to help clean up, the one where I'm on record, having brought $2,000 worth of hardware to upper management's attention, that I could have walked out the door with. Fuck GameStop. Sounds like that $2,000 worth of Xbox 360s were taken out of inventory again, and the district manager or store manager pocketed them. I worked for the most insane, chauvinistic chef ever, in his fine dining restaurant. I was just a grunt, which was unfortunate, given my training. This man tried to be Gordon Ramsay, in that he always screamed at us, except it was never for any good reason. He would smoke pot and cigarettes in the kitchen, and then proceed to dip and double dip breadsticks in all of the sauces. He was disgusting, but I really needed the work at the time. I had a UTI at one time. For the uninitiated, it is literally E. coli bacteria in your urinary tract. The doctor told me to take a couple days, while the antibiotics kicked in, because despite proper hygiene, anything can happen, brought in my doctor's note, and he then proceeded to berate me, threaten to fire me, and march down to the clinic, and tell the doctor to fuck himself. That was enough for me. When I went back, I was armed with a pocket full of glitter and rage. Worked as normal, but the second he got in my face, I reached into my pocket, and ever so gently blew a large handful of glitter into his face, smiled sweetly, said I quit and left. It was satisfying. Edit. Did not mean to strike up a conversation about my chosen form of birth control. I was working as a field manager for a company that had a small team. They had recently hired 2 new guys, who were fairly green to the industry, but not totally brain dead. One guy, let's call him Gary, he's kind of quiet, kept his head down. I had a distinct feeling that he didn't like me, because as his direct supervisor, it was up to me to train him up. Granted, I wasn't the best teacher, as I was somewhat blunt and direct, but never insulting or demeaning. It's a slow week, and we're cleaning up our warehouse. The 5 of us are all knocking it out, so we can get out early, but Gary is kind of slacking off, since he's not really putting much effort in. I ask, Gary, can you run the garbage out? So he loads up the truck, and heads out to the dumpsters behind the building. We had a lot of trash, but leaves behind the cardboard. So I think he's making 2 runs, to kind of stretch out the workload, right? He comes back, and proceeds to not also take the cardboard. Yo Gary, can you also do the cardboard? He gets pissed, storms out to the office, and proceeds to scream about me being a dick to him, to the bosses. Important note, I did not know this. I figured he was going to hit the bathroom. I walk into the office about 5 minutes later, to hear him complaining about how I'm an asshole. The people he's telling this to look at me over his shoulder, and I realize that he's talking mad shit about me. He realizes it, turns around, and it's a classic oh fuck. So my one boss, he tells Gary that I am his supervisor, and while he may not like me, he has to at least do as I ask, provided it's within reason, and taking garbage and cardboard out is part of our regular duties, and we all take care of it. Gary gets insanely pissed, starts screaming about how we're all just buddy, and quits. He removes his keys from his belt. We have truck keys, and literally throws them at my boss, and storms out cursing. We're all in shock, and I'm feeling kinda bashful. Gary comes back in 5 minutes late, and asks for the keys, because his own car and house keys were still attached. Once he gets them, he says, "Fuck you" to all of us, and storms back out. So epic. To this day, still my favorite of all time quitting stories. Nameless photography studio that's been in and out of business, in certain cheap stores. They were shady as heck, like, not ordering customers' images, so they could get them to come in for another session, to try to get them to buy other stuff. My regional manager was a bitch, and would make fun of employees behind their backs. One girl she called horse/mule/donkey, because she had large teeth. One girl they nicknamed Hookabeth because her outfits were more revealing than she liked, etc. I'm sure I had a name, but she was terrible, and I hated her. The company also sucked, and would clock us out automatically, even if we were still working. There was no overtime, even though you were expected to work it, and if you did over 40 hours, they'd split it, so you'd only get 40 one week, and then 40 the next. So one day, a Thursday, I have a lady come in, looking for invitations she had ordered, for her kid's birthday party. They are nowhere. I call the store manager, who says, "Oh, I didn't like her, so I didn't order them." Now, I've had enough of this place, and had a job lined up, that was going to start in 2 weeks. So I tell the lady what the store manager said, and gave her corporate's number. She called them, in front of me, and they basically played dumb. While she's on hold, they call me, and begin to cuss me out, about how I told the customer this/that/everything. They said that I'd be docked pay for this. I laughed, Said fuck it, this isn't worth it. Told the girl on the phone that I was quitting. Gave the lady some free gift cards for her troubles. Shut the store down, and left. Regional manager gave my cell phone number out to all employees to have them prank me. She also tried calling me several times, left some threatening voicemails about how she would ruin me and my career. Still waiting on that. Ended up going to see a friend that weekend, and it was like a weight had been lifted from my shoulders. I slept for 12 hours that Saturday. Edit. Thank you kind stranger for my first ever Reddit silver. Although this was a shit show of a job with a raging cunt for a boss, it gave me the energy and drive to find the best job I ever had, with coworkers and bosses that I truly loved. I'm still friends with 90% with them, and it's been 10 years since the job contract finished. I was working a job at a Hollywood video, for fun. I had just been let go from a .com, with a cushy severance, and was taking it easy for a while, and had decided to go back to doing something fun, to get me back out of the house. So Hollywood video it was. I got paid one step up from minimum, something like $7.30 per hour, but I could rent all of the DVDs I wanted free, 3 at a time, and got an employee discount on all of the previously viewed movies I wanted. So to me, it was a sweet deal. The work wasn't hard, and it paid for what few bills I had at the time, so I wouldn't eat my savings away. In any case, I didn't need the job, but I liked it and I was good at it. The manager saw this, and within 2 weeks I had a key to the door for opening and closing shifts. Again fine, it wasn't rocket science, and I enjoyed talking to people about movies. Then I was assigned closing on Friday night, midnight, and opening on Saturday morning, 8 a.m. At first, it wasn't an issue, but it was miserable. After 2 weeks, I was done. I couldn't do it anymore. It was exhausting. I looked at the schedule and saw that I was scheduled for the back-to-back again, and called the manager to tell her I couldn't do back-to-backs anymore. She said okay, she would change the schedule. 2 days later, nothing. I called her back. She said she couldn't find anyone to change, and that if I could please work this last one, she would make sure the schedule was changed the following week. Fine, I would do it once more, but this is the last time. I really can't keep doing this. That week goes by, and the following week's schedule comes out. I'm scheduled for it again. I called the manager and told her I couldn't work it. She tells me that it is what I am scheduled for, and she has no one else to work it. I tell her she needs to find someone else, and hang up. I am livid at this point, but I hear nothing back and nothing changes on the schedule. That Thursday, I am working my shift and the manager comes in. I tell her to choose either Friday night or Saturday morning, and that in no uncertain terms. Am I working both shifts again? I remind her of her promise. She looks at me and says, "You will work what you are scheduled. There's no one else to take those shifts. You are it." I am pissed at this point. I start slamming DVDs around as I check them in, slamming my cash drawer closed. I am just livid. She makes the comment, without looking up from what she was doing, "You don't have to slam everything around," pouting. That was it. I literally stopped what I was doing, stood still, took the store keys out of my pocket, dropped them on the counter, and walked out to her asking where I was going. Hours of unanswered calls later, she finally stopped trying. It sucked, because it was a fun job at the time, but if the management starts to take that kind of attitude towards their employees, I'm done. I felt bad for the other employees, but hope that she had to work those shifts herself. With that out of the way, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon if you want more content to keep appearing in your subscription box. Thanks for watching, and until next time.